Yo, we're back. And you know what it is already if you didn't know before. And we are the Sports Bag Bros podcast. This is episode number 16. I'm Trav. He's biased. And you know why you're here. The thumbnail talked about Melvin Gordon, and we will talk about him in just a moment. But we're just coming off of a weekend full of sports. Whatever sport you're interested in, that's what's been going on this past weekend. We're talking boxing. We're talking basketball. We're talking baseball. Everything that was going on, and we'll throw in a little bit of high school recruiting because college football is around the corner as well. We're at the end of the month in June. We'll be going to July. Trav Bias on the set. Let's get down to some NBA. Things have been going on this weekend, even a little bit when we left on Thursday when it came down to the draft. We saw things happen there. Fast forward now, the weekend left us with some more news. DeAndre Ayton for the Phoenix Suns is going to stay in Phoenix. I'm not just talking about talent that's there now and that's probably ready to win a championship or at least really push the Denver Nuggets, the defending champs. We're talking about a salary cap where just those couple of guys are about $160 million. $160 million for next season, which is about $6-7 million less than what the salary cap is going to be.
Yeah, it's crazy. You know, they have 5 players under contract. They have to fill out their roster. I'm sure they're going to sign some guys to the veteran exception. It's going to be real interesting, but I believe it's a good move for them to keep Ayton. You don't want KD to be your rim protector. You know, he's getting up there in age. He had the Achilles injury. You know, you want him focusing on offense. And if you got that big guy back there, you know, playing defense, that will help them immensely.
Yeah, and it would. I mean, right now, with that kind of team in place, do you believe that they do really pose a threat to the Denver Nuggets? I mean, right now, do you still talk about Golden State based on the moves they made, or is it just a Denver Nugget and Phoenix Suns deal right now?
Honestly, if Dunleavy Jr. doesn't do more to improve the roster, I believe the championship window is closed. Paul has never been part of a championship team. He's never come off the bench. He doesn't play Warrior basketball. That move, as I said last week many times, it makes no sense. And I honestly believe their window is closed with Chris Paul on the roster.
Now with Chris Paul with a different team, he doesn't have to do as much because he have guys out there who are the alpha dogs of that team. I mean, Steph Curry, of course, leading the way, and Thompson also doing the same thing. He'll be 3 years removed from his injury once he comes back. I mean, what does Chris Paul really have to do other than find these guys? He won't have a whole lot of pressure on him as he had on other teams being the overall field general. Now you're talking about a true shooting guard in Steph Curry because he's not going to play the point.
Well, I'm looking at it from the point of view of, does he fit their style of basketball? If he comes off the bench, you know, Steph, Clay, they're running off picks. Draymond, he's running the point forward and doing all of that. They run up tempo. Chris Paul comes in the game and he slows it down. So is your first string going to play a different offense from your second string? I mean, how are you going to practice that? That makes no sense.
Well, was that a Freudian slip when you add Draymond Green? Because he's probably not going to be with the team. So I guess when you say something like that, you're assuming they're probably going to bring him back now that they look like they got rid of perhaps the real problem in the locker room, which was Jordan Poole. I mean, that is what I'm led to believe when they made these moves and moved a young guy out to bring in an older guy with an injury history like Paul in there. You would think that, well, the problem that the association, the organization, regardless of what people have been saying in front of a camera, there's been nothing but dissension on that team behind closed doors, and the play really reflected it. Well, they get rid of the young guy, the one with so much time and talent and trajectory going upwards. They move him out, bring the older guy in. So it makes it seem like Draymond Green may be back. Or there's a possibility.
You know, they got rid of a big contract, and that frees up some money for Draymond. And I'm assuming he's going to sign with them. If he doesn't, that would be like a kick to the gut to Steph and Clay. You know, those guys, they came up together. You know, they're road dogs. You know, they ride or die together. And if Draymond leaves, man, that's a serious blow.
Yeah, and then you're still stuck with Chris Paul pretty much coming up.
And Udonis Haslam probably got some maybe 20 games in them. They want
What,
to go
veteran?
the older veteran route. Go get UD.
You already know he's just a professional fan. He's been that for about 10 years now on that Miami bench, and he was needed in the locker room. This is probably the type of leadership and stability you needed in the Golden State locker room. What does that say about Steph Curry and the veterans of that locker room when something like that gets so far out of hand and it really affects the way you play coming off of a defense of the NBA championship?
Yeah, I don't know what was going on in that locker room. It seems they got rid of the guy who was causing the most problems.
Yeah.
Want to listen to Draymond. I mean, and that's understandable. And he didn't want to listen to Steph. So, hey, you don't want to listen to the leaders on the team, then you got to go.
Well, we talk about Chris Paul right now being an older point guard, an older player who can't stay healthy. That kind of leads me to the next topic, which is another one who can't stay healthy, but was a phenomenal player before the injuries. Derrick Rose, another free agent on the market. Where would he fit in at all when he hasn't really played since like January of this past season for the Knicks, who were a playoff team, but definitely not in contention for a championship?
Yeah, it's hard to say. I don't know what the market is for D Rose. He can still provide a punch. Maybe he signs with a contender who's looking for a veteran who can give him a spark off the bench. But he is obviously not what he used to be.
No.
And he's not going to carry a team either. So hopefully he lands in the right spot where he can go out there and do some damage and help a team win. But, not a lot of teams even have cap space with the new CBA. So it's going to be very interesting when free agency hits.
Yeah, but what he had done for the Knicks, he hasn't really done anything. And I don't know about the leadership part of it because the Knicks didn't have too much going on in the locker room that we've heard of. And I mean, where was he really needed? He hasn't done much of anything. He played last time, I believe, in January, pretty much just going to practice and getting a paycheck outside of that. And, he hasn't done much throughout the past 3 or 4 years. I mean, he's done some things, but he was way too inconsistent. He reminds me a lot of what Kemba Walker was up against before. Well, it was over for him.
Yeah, he might just be following Kyrie Irving's lead. Play half a season, get paid.
But Kyrie Irving was doing it because he was making decisions. It wasn't based on his ability to play. He can play. Well, he gets hurt, but he still can play. And typically full time. His career is not close to being over yet in terms of what he can provide on the court. Maybe with his mouth, he might be out. Maybe because of something he does off the court. He might decide to be one of these cerebral types and gives up the money and goes with the march and the lead and the civil rights and everything else, outside of that. But, Kyrie is Kyrie. I mean, this is one of those players where you just kind of say Kyrie's Kyrie and you leave it alone at that.
Well, let's move on then.
Yeah, let's move on from there. And once again, this is the Sports Bag Bros podcast, episode 16, coming off of a huge weekend of sports. There is so much going on, and we're talking about the NBA and what's going on with that kind of news. We're going to get to Melvin Gordon being in a disgruntled NFL running back, which he doesn't believe is a good thing in the NFL these days. We'll get to that in just a moment, but there's still just a little bit of NBA news going on because there was the draft just last Thursday. Players getting taken. Of course, Victor Wembanyama is now in the NBA playing for the San Antonio Spurs. He had dinner with the legendary San Antonio players just this past weekend. And of course, that includes Manu Ginobili. I know I shouldn't be mentioning him first when you talk about the other guys who are there. We're talking Tim Duncan and we're talking the Admiral Robinson. Come on, man. We're talking all of these major people there, and he respects them. He says he feels comfortable. So much so, he's not going to play in the FIBA Nationals or international tournament. He's going to, for the French team, he's going to stay in San Antonio and work on his craft. Good or bad decision?
I think that's a very good and smart decision. As we mentioned last week, he played 19 games last year, and he's coming to the NBA where they play 82 games. How many games will he actually play? I think it would be not an upset, but if he plays 60 strong games, I think that's a good year, for not having played anywhere near that before. So I think it's smart on his part. Also, he's employed by the Spurs now, so I think he should focus on getting better for the NBA, not going and playing for FIBA or France in the FIBA World Cup, and perhaps not coming in at the top of his game for the NBA season.
I read some of these comments after the move was made or announced, and then it was like, this is a pop decision. This isn't one of his original decisions. Either way, I think it helps the San Antonio Spurs, and you're saying he is an employee of the San Antonio Spurs right now. You better hit the ground running, or if not limping, if better, if anything at all. And, does he play in the summer league this year? Because some of these teams, especially with their high-profile players and him being so thin, kind of like last year with Chet Holmgren, gets injured and you might miss a season. I don't know if they might play him this summer, or I'm looking forward to it if they do, but would it be a good idea if they put him out there to play in the summer league?
I would put him out there, maybe not with the intention of him playing every game in the summer, but get his feet wet, let him get some experience against some other players who are in the NBA or will be in the NBA, possibly in the NBA, a little stiffer competition, and, let him work on his game.
Yeah, because even though all of these foreign countries have caught up to the U.S. in basketball, not caught up to their level, but they're definitely not what they were in 1992, that's still not the talent you're probably going to see even in the G League on a consistent basis for what he's used to seeing. Yeah, and I think it might be helpful for him to go out there a couple of times, and not all the time, because that wear and tear, and then that just every time he goes out there, there's that possibility of something just going bad. I'd rather would just see him just a little bit, get the crowd a little bit wet, and then go and watch him during the regular season or even the preseason when basketball comes. And, basketball should come to an end right now. There's just so much news coming in because football is right around the corner. The NFL is coming up. Training camps start in July, and media days for college football is doing just as much. And to that end, when it comes to NFL football, Melvin Gordon is on the mind. And what's on his mind is NFL running backs aren't being paid or not treated the way that he thinks they should be treated. He thinks that he said specifically that it's the worst position to play in the NFL now. And I believe it's true. I mean, it's always been the case that these running backs had the lowest lifespan in the NFL at one point, 2 or 3 years. I think most recently 4 to 6. And I think it has a lot to do with, more passing in the league and not as much running.
Exactly. With spread offenses and more downfield passing, the running back has become less of a focus. And I can't blame franchises for not paying top dollar for running backs. Their value is not what it used to be.
Nope.
So that's the bottom line. It's unfortunate for running backs, but that's just the way it is.
Yeah, you look at the running backs of today, and you have names, but you don't have those elite names on a consistent basis as we saw in the past when you had Barry Sanders and Emmitt Smith, and you can still name other running backs on other teams. Not as good as those guys, but they were at least prominent names during the NFL at the time. I mean, it wasn't such a bad thing when you had Curtis Martin running the football for the New York Jets, or even when he was in New England. And then you had Jamal Anderson was a running back playing for the Atlanta Falcons. You can go through the list. Natrone Means back in the day, and there was a place for them. You didn't share the carries as often. And Adrian Peterson, you had your workhorse running backs, but that's not needed. Even with Derrick Henry playing with the way he's playing, you really don't need that kind of back all the time. Because first of all, they're going to wear down, which he's doing now. And in the past 2 seasons, we've started seeing the slowing down and the injuries that Derrick Henry is getting. And the value, as you said, is not there. And unfortunately, I think that Gordon is completely correct when it comes down to even the money. Right now, going into the 2023 season, the running back making the most money for the 23 season is a running back who has not played it down. Bijan Robinson coming out of Texas. How is that the case with all of these other guys like Christian McCaffrey, who's now number 2, is also playing?
Yeah, well, McCaffrey should get paid because he catches a lot of balls out of the backfield. He's a multi-purpose back, and that's the way the league has been the last 8 to 10 years. If you're not a multi-purpose back, you're not going to be a focus of any offense. You don't see guys running the ball 25, 30 times a game anymore. Running backs can't go to their agent and say, hey, I ran for 1,500 yards and scored 22 touchdowns. It just doesn't happen.
Yep, and that's why Dalvin Cook probably still waiting for a team to go to, because they're not going to meet his dollar amount, I don't believe. I mean, they'll come to a happy medium eventually because he's a running back, he's an NFL player, and he wants to play. Saquon Barkley's the same thing. But at least Saquon, during the argument and during the negotiations, he's come out and said, you know what, I'm not trying to break the bank. I just want a fair amount. Now, what is a fair amount in the NFL now for running backs is to be determined between he and his agent and what his team believes his value is. But to tell you another example of what a running back is compared to the rest of the NFL, as the NFL has put more of the onus on the wide receivers or the offense to entertain us, wide receivers and quarterbacks in particular, Tyreek Hill is getting paid the most going into this season if he ends up playing, but he's getting paid the most, $30 million for this year. That's a far cry from the $13.72 million Bijan Robinson is going to be getting as a rookie and the highest paid running back for the 2023 season.
Yeah, that shows exactly where the league is right now. There's a focus on passing, and if you can catch the ball and put it in the end zone, you're going to get paid.
Yep, and well, that's what the crowd comes to see. They like to see nice running backs. They love to see Barry Sanders, and they love to see these types of running backs. But as far as the NFL teams are concerned, they still believe that the bread and butter of the NFL is the excitement of wide receivers running through defenses, not necessarily taking the hits they used to take either, but just running through defenses, putting up these ridiculous numbers. Now you're going to have even more numbers because 17 games are being played now, even though the NFL, who is so concerned about CTE, is now adding an extra game so you can get more CTE. It doesn't make any sense, but that's what the NFL has been doing.
But you can't hit receivers like you used to.
Exactly. You can't even really bump them at the line of scrimmage like you used to. I mean, I'm not going back to the days of when you
can't hit quarterbacks for that matter neither. Seems like the only ones you can hit are running backs.
Yeah, running backs, and they're getting paid the least. They're the most expendable, it seems. I mean, you could just take a little stout wide receiver, put him in motion, and give him shovel passes, or just put him in a slot and just give him passes, and the running back is almost rendered obsolete. I mean, it's ridiculous because guys are more athletic, and these defenses, the rules have been taken away from them to where they can do a little bit more things freely to where they have to kind of let you by. So it's almost offenses, unless you have a really bad team or a bad quarterback or both, it's really hard to advance to stop a passing attack these days in the NFL. And as far as money goes, with Tyreek Hill getting $30 million for a wide receiver going into this 2023 season, I'm sure these boys wish they were on the other side of the sports world, which is baseball, where guys get paid a whole lot more and they're guaranteed contracts, because we just passed this weekend. And when it comes down to this baseball, the Colorado Rockies took on the Los Angeles Angels, or the Anaheim Angels, whatever you want to call them these days, the Los Angeles Angels, and lost 25-1. The Angels scored 23 runs in the first 4 innings. Unbelievable. Football. That's what it was.
Should have called off the Dogs after the first 2 touchdowns.
That's exactly what happened. Unbelievable, man. And the worst part about this is they weren't even playing in Coors Field. Typically, when you play in Coors Field, the over-under is already through the roof, about 13 or 14 runs. And, and they expect to get there between both teams. This team was getting there by the 4th inning. They're doubling it up. They went into this game with an over-under of 12. Forget about it. It was done. Their pitching warm-ups. Come on, it was over.
It was ugly. I'm surprised they didn't get someone from the crowd to start pitching.
Unbelievable, man. And come on, that little Genki home run that they got towards the end, I think in the 8th inning, kind of saving face. What's the difference? 25-0, 25-1. I guess it saves it saves face, but you don't go to record books.
Right. That's pride right there. Pride. They avoided the shutout.
Kept you from getting 23 runs laid on you in the 4 innings if you had pride. But that's what's been going on with the Angels and the Rockies. But of course, to save face, of course, the Rockies ended up winning yesterday. Well, of course, they didn't score 25 runs, but they ended up winning. So look, whether you win by 25, win by 1, it's only 1 win for the season. So I guess they can look at it that. And as baseball continues to move on, the All-Star break is coming up in just a couple of weeks as we're creeping towards July. The Florida Marlins, who I believe is probably the surprise team in all of baseball right now, is continuing to surprise, and they're doing it with a young roster. Your guy, our guy, I guess, Luis Arias, He went into yesterday's game batting at 401, went 1 for 4. Now he's at 399 again. And another thing, you said he has to stay around 415, 420 if he really is going to threaten that 400 batting average threshold. He's going to probably have to be around 415, 420 because that slump is coming somewhere.
Yeah, you almost expected during a 162 game season, long baseball season. And I don't know of any player that didn't go through one bad stretch, whether that bad stretch is 6 games, 10 games, he's going to go through a bad stretch at some point. If he can get his average up to 420, maybe he can absorb that bad stretch and get hot, and maybe he'll hover around 400. We have to wait and see what happens, where he's at in September.
You know what? Well, right now, he's making a real good push toward 400. He's being consistent, more consistent than anyone I can really remember in the recent past because he's getting there. He dropped down to 382 at one point. He's back up over 400. So this dude's making serious hits when he's already this season's gone 5 for 5 3 times. You know what? He might have some more left in him because we haven't even gotten to the halfway point of the season.
When did they play the Rockies?
Yeah, right. Field. You know what? He might be at 450. He can take a couple of rest periods during the second half.
By the time that series is over, right? Might go 12 for 16 or something.
I'm serious, and he probably could bring his home run total up as well. Because I've read some comments on people who try to degrade what he's doing. It's overrated. It's not like it used to be. How come it's not like it used to be? Because you got a bunch of guys out there who are swinging for the fences and windmills everywhere. Dudes, like I mentioned most times when Joe DiMaggio back in 1941 only struck out 13 times, even though it's just 154 games. It doesn't matter if you get someone like Aaron Judge who strikes out 13 times on a West Coast swing. I mean, during the course of a season. Come on. Right. So they're looking at him and comparing him to guys in the past, guys that we talk about, like, Tony Gwynn, who put the bat on the ball all the time, and he was effective. But they look at Arise and they're saying that he's not really doing anything. He just has numbers. What, are you kidding? His numbers are directly responsible for what's going on with the Marlins right now because they're supposed to be the bottom dwellers that we've always seen for the past 10 years.
Yeah, they're 9 games over 500.
Yes.
It's just unfortunate that they're in the same division as the Braves. If they were in either Central Division, American League or National League, they'd probably be 8 to 10, 12 games up.
Yeah, exactly.
But the Braves are doing what they're doing, so they're 6 games back of the Braves. But you talk about him not being appreciated. How many home runs did Pete Rose hit? He's the hit king. So baseball is not all about home runs, even though it has been recently. People have fallen in love with the home runs. Baseball is not all about home runs, especially you get to the playoffs. If you can generate runs with a single, stolen base, a sacrifice, I mean, you could win a game 1-0. And home runs aren't always going to win.
Now, right now in the National League, if you had to go with one or the other between he and Ronald Acuna of the Braves, I think you go with Ronald Acuna because he has a little bit more diversity to his game. I mean, he's stolen 35 bases this season in an age where people don't steal bases anymore. But with the new rules in place, people are now starting to pick up the stolen bases. And he's only been caught 6 times. On the other hand, Arise, he stole 1 base, got caught 1 time. He tried twice. That's it. That's not his game. But he gets the bat on the ball. His on-base percentage is still 45. Come on. But, I know when it comes down to it, playing on Atlanta is a lot more popular these days than playing with the Marlins. And so if it came down to a battle of who deserves to be the MVP, Ronald Acuna would get it. And by the votes he's gotten to get an automatic bid to the All-Star game, we already know where these people are heading. But, as a whole this season, the National League, which is typically the league that doesn't score as many runs, it's always been the American League with the DH and all that. Everyone has a DH now, but the National League, they're leading in a lot of the offensive statistics for a change. Usually it'll be pitching, but with the offense, they have guys batting average-wise, when you look at the entire major leagues, they have guys ahead of a lot of American League guys. Acuna being the number 1 guy, Rise being another guy, and the top guy, I guess, numbers-wise in the American League, Bo Bichette, the son of Dante Bichette, but back in the day, he named him Bo after Bo Jackson. That still bugs me out. Like, yo, you're talking about a huge fan, bro. His father was playing when Bo was around, and Like, yo, I respect with somebody. I'm gonna name my kid, and his name is Bo. It's not a nickname.
And Dante's a totally different player than his father was.
Oh, absolutely, man.
Contact, but can still hit for power. Good athlete, good defensively. Where his dad was basically a feaster family.
Yeah, it's pretty much a journeyman. I mean, a little journeyman boxer, man. But yeah, a Bo, I think he's going to obviously spend not the rest of his career, but a large part of his career, unless someone steals him in free agency.
I said Dante. I meant Bo. Sorry.
But Bo is just I think he's a very good player right now. I mean, his average steadily has gone up. He's in his fifth year in the league. I mean, young dude. He's from here in Florida, so we heard a lot about him coming up through the pipeline. But man, for him to be as good as he is right now, but I'm just saying it, he's the one from the American League that's showing up where everyone else seems to come from the National League right now. And you get teams like the Marlins, and you look at Yuri Perez, the pitcher for the Marlins, another 20-year-old player. You're talking about a bunch of young players on this Marlins team. I'm here in Jacksonville, and their AAA affiliate, the Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp, which used to be the AA affiliate of the when they were the Jacksonville Suns and the affiliate of the Los Angeles Dodgers a while back, their players come through here. Ronald Acuna was through here just last season. We watched them, and it was a huge game. But that Marlins team is putting a lot of talent into the majors now. I don't know if obviously it's the management. When you get guys that young, their scouts are doing their job, something the Yankees can't seem to do. They always want to pick up the finished product. These teams like the Devil Rays, like the Tampa Bay Rays and the Miami Marlins, those guys have an organization that has an eye for talent, and they're bringing these guys through, and it's showing up. 20 years old for Yuri Perez, 5-1. He has like a 1.34 ERA right now. He's 20 years old. 20. Dwight Gooden, man.
He's off to a tremendous start. He struck out 54 batters and I believe 47 innings. And as you mentioned, his minuscule 1.34 ERA. So we'll see how long he can keep it going.
Yeah.
But he's off to a great start.
Absolutely. And, the All-Star break is typically when a lot of these younger guys start falling apart after the All-Star break. You know what I mean? Because there's moves made and so forth. But, he has a whip of .98 now after winning 2-0 yesterday. I mean, he just in 9 strikeouts, 1 walk. How come we can't get these pitchers? But anyway, yeah, I'm swearing. This guy's coming through the pipeline at 20 years old, doing all that crazy stuff like back in the day. And the Miami Marlins, I mean, this is the same team when they had freaking Dontrell Willis doing the same thing when he was a young guy. So they just have a knack for getting these young dudes. And Freddie Freeman, now with the Los Angeles Dodgers, hits his 2,000th hit. Hall of Famer. Now, I wouldn't call him a Hall of Famer right now. He's on a trajectory to become a full-fledged Hall of Famer. I mean, 3,000 hits gets you in automatically. 2,000 hits at this point in his career shows there's a possibility.
Right. He's got a lot of work to do. But looking at his numbers, he has a career 299 average. He has over 1,000 RBIs.
Yeah.
And last 4 or 5 seasons, he's hit over 300, I believe, 3 or 4 of those seasons. So, he's been improving his batting average. And if you end your career with a batting average over 300, you did some work.
Yeah, and it also depends. I think it really matters that you play for a flagship team, a team that's known in the big city. If he would have stayed in Atlanta, man, Atlanta might get themselves another World Series. Without him this year, they might be on their way to a World Series the way they've been playing right now. But he's in Los Angeles, and, Los Angeles has had their problems of late. I heard, by the way, that he and Acuna didn't get along very well. That's why he wasn't so reluctant to leave Atlanta. I think he saw Acuna coming through the pipeline, and he realized that, he probably is going to get some of the favoritism more so than even himself. So he goes over to the Dodgers. But the Dodgers are traditionally going to do well. And I'm sure after the All-Star break, they'll get back on the right track because they've been having some serious issues of late.
You're not saying Freeman is one of those get off my lawn older guys.
You know what? It might be because if you look at the personalities of Ronald Acuna, he's like the happy-go-lucky guy. He jumps around. Now that his knee's better, he jumps around even more. He's happy running around the plate. And Freeman is more of that baseball guy. You know what I mean? This guy who talks about the unwritten rules of baseball. Those are those get off my lawn types. You can't do this. You can't fling the bat. You can't look at me if you don't run. Those kind of guys. I think he's one. You're right.
He'll never go to San Diego then.
Oh, San Diego, forget about it. They got nothing but a bunch of young guys down there spending a whole bunch of money, and then maybe even more. I mean, Ohtani, he's not that kind of guy, but they're talking about he may be an option for, I don't know where they're going to get the money from, but he may be an option for the San Diego Padres. And his quasi-agent, Mike Trout, says he's going to get between $500 to $600 million for the contract he's about to get.
Trout saying that about himself or about Ohtani?
No, Trout said that about Ohtani. He said about Ohtani, he's like, hey, this guy's going
to get paid as a hitter and a pitcher. So, yeah,
that's true. That's a unique situation. I don't think, obviously, in modern baseball, we haven't seen someone come through that has that type of skill set to offer. So, yeah, it may require a special type of money and guarantee. So, 500 in today's age, especially, $500 million to $600 million, a few years, even when adjusted for inflation, a few years ago, you would never think that was impossible, but it's really
should at least get some incentives in there. If he wins 15 games, if he strikes out 150 or 200 batters, give him a bump.
I remember when George Steinbrenner was alive, and you didn't get extra, you didn't get bonuses for getting to the All-Star game or Golden Gloves or things like that. He just gave you what he gave you because he probably overpaid you anyway. You know what I mean? So you just be happy with your money. When you're getting $500 million to perhaps $600 million, bro, it's all a package deal. So whatever you do, then
gonna get that much.
Nah,
we'll see. But
I don't know now. I mean, I didn't think that Mike Trout was going to get the contract he had gotten. You know what I mean? I thought he was going to get some. Aaron Judge, I didn't think he deserved what he had gotten. But as long as someone believes you deserve it, you get it. And he got it for the Yankees, even though I think he's an outrageously spectacular player when his toe's not hurting. He's a pretty damn good player, and he deserves the money he's getting. But I was a little skeptical. But it's not for me to be skeptical. It's for the ownership. Hal Steinbrenner has to be the guy to say, you know what, I don't think he ain't worth that either. Let's haggle a little bit more. Yeah, but yeah, Ohtani is going to get exactly what he deserves, whatever it is, and that's wherever he goes.
Somebody's going to break him off with a huge.
Break him off, nice. I hope it's a contending team, man. You don't want to spend that kind of money. You can't build the rest of the guys around you to get somewhere. Right. You don't want to be in a losing environment like A-Rod was with Texas. When the Rangers, when he was just getting an MVP on the last place team, and all he had to show for was a trophy and nothing else. A last place trophy and an MVP. It didn't make any sense. And what did not make sense is that we came out of this weekend with so much to talk about is there's boxing involved. Finally, more boxing. You watched the fight that I didn't get a chance to see completely. When Berlanga got together with Quigley, you tell me how Berlanga was having some issues in the beginning, but he kind of closed the gap and he came out, like you said, blazing in the last round when he needed to get the win.
Yeah, I didn't understand it. He looked like he wasn't motivated. He was head hunting. His corner was telling him, hey, you got to throw your jab, throw your jab. He was throwing his jabs, but he wasn't using it to his advantage. He wasn't using it to set up other punches. And Quigley fought a good fight. But in the 12th, I thought it was a close fight, but I thought Berlanga was ahead. But in the 12th, they told him something. I don't recall what it was, but they lit a fire under his ass. And he came out guns blazing like it was the first round. And he dropped him twice. He couldn't finish him. But if he fought like that from the starter fight in the first round, he would have finished him. So I don't understand. But while I was watching that fight, all I was thinking was this guy better stay away from the top guys. Caleb Plant would outbox him. Benavidez would hurt him. Canelo would beat him. I just don't see him competing at that top level. But he fought the 12th round differently. So is he going to come with that intensity that I'm coming for your ass? That changes things. But, that might also make it easier for Caleb Plant to outbox him. That makes it easier for Benavidez to hit him. So we'll see.
So you're saying after he showed that he can get the job done, because it does take a special kind of fighter to hear the instructions. We've seen Terrence Crawford do it against Porter. And to get the instructions, thinking you're behind or thinking you really have to go and get the knockout and not leave it in the judge's hands, and you get someone that can actually push the pedal to the metal and make that happen even after that, you think that these top guys are still too much for him, or is there something he's going to have to change, or can he change what needs to be changed to fight these top guys?
I don't believe he's ready for them right now. And they were trying to motivate him during the fight. It's just in the 12th round, either he finally listened or they said the right word where it clicked. I don't know, but he's not ready. He has to improve. So if I was in his camp, I'd try and get him a couple more fights, get him to work on some things before he go for the big guys.
In your opinion, what is he going to have to work on to fight these bigger guys, the bigger name guys that have more of a complete fight game? Is this just a maturation process, the way he's just going to get better with each fight? Or has he hit somewhat of a plateau and has to refine something that's really glaring that's going to prevent him from beating those top guys?
Well, he started his career out with so many knockouts in the first round.
Mm-hmm.
And when guys don't fall the first round, maybe he hasn't had a plan B. What I don't see is him, working the body, throwing combinations, doing things to break down his opponent to maybe wear them down for a knockout in the mid to late rounds, where he just goes out there head hunting. Like I said, he'll throw his jabs, but he doesn't work off the jab. So you can't just go out there head hunting against the top fighters.
No. Especially those big punching guys, especially young big punchers, they get gassed very fast when the punches don't work, and then they're left to just sink in quicksand in the later rounds if it's even getting to that point.
Vladimir Klitschko. Before he got with Manny Stewart.
Yeah, I remember that fight. That was against Layman Brewster, when he just got tired like immediately.
In the second round,
then he was gone. In the 5th round, he was like done. And he just ran a marathon and then decided, oh man, I got to fight a little bit later, and decided to come. I mean, he got washed in that fight, man. But yeah, man, I think I know Berlanga, man. There's just so many top guys right now that have more of a refined skill set, and these are veteran guys who kind of been through the gamut, and they've responded. We've seen them have to suck it up in wins and losses. In Caleb Plant's case, he gave Canelo a tough fight until he lost the fight, and then he went kind of balls to the wall with Benavidez as well, but Benavidez had too much volume for him, but he prevented himself from getting knocked out in that fight. So yeah, boxing continues to move on, and this past weekend it was no different. And we saw Carlos Adames versus Julian J-Rock Williams. Going into this, I thought J-Rock was shot, and he started the fight off so sharp, and I was like, wow, I was impressed with how sharp he was. And then he started getting it. I mean, he had to really hang on in the 3rd round, and he was getting beat from pillar to post, but he was able to suck it up. And then it kind of went back and forth like that for a while. And then finally, I believe, the 9th round, he's getting whooped on again. He's behind. And right when the ref is trying to stop the fight, when he's getting overwhelmed, but he gets knocked off. And then when he's about to stop the fight again, Julian Williams starts fighting back, and the ref's already in the motion of stopping the fight, so he stops the fight. So it looks like he shouldn't have stopped the fight. Now, based on what we saw, he should not have stopped the fight. But based on what was happening, I don't think you can really argue about what had happened, because it happened earlier. It's later in the fight. Guys don't really defend themselves the same or well that late in the fight when they're fatigued. And going by his face, he was not better for it. I mean, as Lennox Lewis would say, look at the state of his face. That's how you look at this guy. His face wasn't looking well. He was taking a beating. And based on what happened, it's going to allow him to continue, because he's going to always and people want to tell him they should have never stopped it. You look good. And on the other hand, I'm thinking, man, he needs to retire, find another line of work. But you know how boxers are. They're not going to listen to me. They're not going to listen to the people around them. They're just warriors inside their heart, especially a Philly fighter. You just can't tell them anything.
Yeah, the outcome was no longer in doubt. So you can't really argue with the stoppage.
No.
And at that point, there's a saying, the adults have to step in to save a fighter from himself.
Yeah.
And that's what happened.
Well, the 3rd adult in the ring had to stop the fight. I think he did the right thing. It was just under bad circumstances, a luck of the draw deal, when he's trying to step in. And as he's stepping in, Jay is trying to throw a punch back, and it makes it look like he has a whole lot left, when in fact it was more reflective than anything else. So the referee shouldn't get as much flack as he had gotten, because I've seen some people talk about how bad a stoppage it was when it was it was questionable only because of the way it stopped. But if you watch the entire fight, you kind of realize that, you know what, more punishment wasn't going to be in his best interest. And that's another fight we can talk about when it comes down to fighters that have something in our interest. Canelo finally possibly fighting Jamel Charlo, fighting him on September. In September, probably the Mexican Independence Day, where Canelo likes to fight. What do you think about this fight? Is it a case of because he's old, because he hasn't fought in a long time, and this is his first fight at 168, this is the best opportunity to fight a guy with a name?
You said it. You said it. I agree with that statement. Yes. If Charlo was coming off a big victory, beating somebody impressively, do I think Canelo would choose him for this next fight? No. No way in hell. But, I said he wasn't going to fight Charlo. He wasn't going to fight Andre. So I was wrong about that. But, how dangerous is Charlo, being that he hasn't been in the ring in 2 years?
Yeah, 2 years is a long time, man. I don't know.
Hey, don't let Canelo lose, man. Don't let him lose, because I will clown him. I swear.
The problem is that he still may lose. I think we saw a lot of what's going on with Canelo when he fought John Ryder in his last fight. John Ryder shouldn't have been on the same level. This is the point where we see that Canelo is probably slipping out of his prime. And how long was he supposed to be there to begin with? He's now getting out of his prime. He still has something left. But Charlo is now entering his prime. And even without time boxing over the last 2 years, a nice training camp and getting in there and kind of feeling yourself as you're getting into it, I think he has that ability. He has that athleticism. He certainly has that power. I'm not even worried about whether he brings the power to 168. He has enough to make you think regardless. And as much as Canelo was getting hit by John Ryder, if Charlo hits him as often, things could get very interesting. You're going to really need some Vegas refs and Vegas judges for this fight.
Yeah. When was the last time Canelo fought, Bevo, I guess, but someone with really good speed and technique and knows what he's doing in the ring?
Yeah, and Bevo just wanted to outbox him because he's just not a knockout artist. He's just like most Europeans. They just love the art of boxing. They look at it as sport. That's it. They don't look at it as savagery. Well, Charlo looks at it as pretty much savagery and boxing and his money and his reputation. So he wants to go in there, and everybody who fights Canelo or a fighter of his status, they want to put their best foot forward. 2 years off, or who cares? They want to go in and do something. I think he's a live dog. If this fight is made and they fight in September, he's extremely live dog going against Canelo. Canelo has something to think about in this fight.
Yeah, I agree. Charlo's no pushover, so it won't be an easy win.
No.
But as I mentioned, if Charlo was coming off an impressive victory a couple months ago, Canelo would not have picked him for his next fight. You mentioned that he's coming out of his prime. Well, maybe that meat's no longer available in Mexico either.
Prime rib, prime meat, all of that stuff.
Whatever he was eating, I don't know. Well, that's what happens. Stop eating that meat, and maybe you're not the fighter you were.
Well, every dog has a fight left in them. Every old boxing dog, every boxing warrior has a good fight left in them. But I just think Charlo may have his time and may have caught him at the right time if those two do indeed get together. And with fights that are coming up in boxing and possibilities, we're talking Deontay Wilder possibly fighting Andy Ruiz, which I think is an absolutely intriguing fight. You can't sleep on Andy Ruiz. Forget about the way he's built. We should have learned our lesson back when he fought Anthony Joshua. He has a real chance of winning, but it's always going to be that Deontay Wilder power that can just turn the lights out. Bill is due.
Yeah, I think this is a bad matchup for Andy Ruiz. Wilder's tall, he's long. He's gonna be there to get hit, and you've seen whatever Wilder hits, he hurts. Yeah. Even Fury, he lost 3 times. Okay, he lost twice, but he dropped Fury twice in the last fight.
Yeah, 4 times total.
Yeah, dropped him twice in the first fight. Wilder's a strong puncher. I think this is a very dangerous fight for Ruiz.
Andy Ruiz has probably among the best skill sets of heavyweight boxers because, as I've mentioned in the past, he has that amateur pedigree where a lot of heavyweights only have a handful of fights. He had over 100 amateur fights. He's refined his skills, and you see his fast hands. And you see his skills. I mean, Anthony Joshua saw it firsthand. You know, he got robbed by Parker down there in Australia, but he has fast hands and he's good with that. We saw it against Ortiz, and he still got a little pop to him, but he does tend to stay in front of you, and his better Mexican gets the best of him. He has to show his heart, like his little guys. He thinks, you know what, you're not the only ones who can show the heart. That might be to his detriment against a guy like Wilder.
Yeah, because of the size disparity, he's going to have to go at Wilder. And, you know, one of the basic rules is you don't follow a puncher.
No.
If you're going to Wilder, that spells doom, in my opinion.
And I don't see Wilder backing up too often in these fights. I mean, I watched his career. For most of his career, he doesn't do too much backing up. I mean, not even from a setup standpoint to put you into a trap. He's so unrefined when it comes down to overall boxing skills because he's just raw power. He doesn't do the setup things. He doesn't walk you into shots. He just hits you. And This is probably what's going to happen with Andy Ruiz. But I still think it's an intriguing matchup for as long as it happens because, you know, Ruiz is going to come to fight regardless of how his physical being looks. He's going to fight. He's not going to stand there and let you beat on him.
Well, that remains to be seen because he came to fight in the first Joshua fight, but really not the second fight. He was not mentally prepared. He was not physically prepared in that second fight. So,
but Joshua did everything he possibly could to stay away, use a jab, and actually box and use skill. Whereas that's not what you have to worry about with Deontay Wilder. I mean, they said he was working on his jab, but as soon as you hit him hard, the jab's out the window. He's back to throwing windmills, and he's looking to hurt you. I mean, that's just what's going to happen if those two get in there. He did it against Luis Ortiz both times, knocked him out, and I don't know.
When he fought Joshua the second fight, he thought he was going to land one left hook, two left hooks, a body shot, and the fight was going to be over.
But he was still buzzing him in the 10th round. He was still getting results in the 10th round. He just didn't get the result he wanted. Anthony Joshua was still getting the wide eyes and the baby legs in the 10th round. So, but with Wilder,
that's just more about Joshua than Ruiz was that night.
Oh yeah, probably so. But as far as he and Wilder getting together, I just think it's an interesting fight because you have a guy. This is where pure boxing on the heavyweight level will get a chance to see what happens with a guy. A guy with fast hands, because Luis Ortiz didn't have fast hands when he fought Wilder or anyone else. But Andy Ruiz does have the fast hands. He does have the chin, and he does have the heart. He doesn't get tired. The dude's overweight, and he does not get tired in 12 rounds. Yeah,
he's overweight, but he's in shape.
Yeah,
I want to speak to the circuses going on in boxing. You saw the clip I sent to you. There was tag team boxing.
Oh God, that guy.
They said you could tag your partner anytime, not even at the end of a round. Like if you're messed up and you're in the corner, hey, make the tag. What is going on? Then this morning I see Fury says he has an offer from John Jones for a hybrid fight. What kind of hybrid fight? If John Jones can't wrestle, he's gonna get knocked out. If he can wrestle, Fury's gonna get choked out. What are we doing, man? And if you're listening, if you're watching, don't buy this shit, man. It's ridiculous.
Don't blame Floyd either, man. This crap has been going on for too long. Oh my God. And now we're talking about Elon Musk may fight Zuckerberg in a freaking fight. Zuckerberg is checking out Chael Sonnen. And
Zuckerberg he accepted the challenge. What are we doing, man? Come on.
Making a mockery of sports, man. This is supposed to be when we come together and laugh.
At least back in the day when they had celebrity boxing, we knew it was a joke.
Yeah.
You know, Willis fought this guy, and Screech fought Horseshack. I mean, we knew.
I remember that.
We knew it was a joke.
Tumbo fought the fridge. Number Tumbo was freaking bold. The new bold fought the fridge. The fridge quit out. He's like, yo, forget, I just can't do it. I'm too tired. But anyway, that'll be it for now. That'll be it for now for the Sports Bag Bros podcast, episode number 16. We hope you enjoyed it.
Tomorrow night.
All the information you need to see is down in the description. Check it out. Click on it. Make sure you subscribe, all the other stuff. Hope you like the show. We'll catch you tomorrow on 17. Good night.